Hi there guys and gals and YouTubers. Just a quick vid on a little, I suppose an experiment in a way you could say. Came about for a number of reasons. Initially, obviously making knives and things like that, and some unusual sized ones, shall we say, not unusual, different sized ones, shall we say. I ended up left with a number of pieces of steel which really either were only really big enough for a very small knife, or something along those lines. However, because I had quite a bit of the 2mm, I think it's 2.2mm, something just over 2mm stock, that doesn't really lend itself to things like small neck knives and things like that, because it's just a bit too thin. It starts to get uncomfortable. I like either a 3mm, which is good for weight, or a 4mm, which is a bit thicker for holding. So, you know, I had a little bit of a think about this, and then a couple of things came together. One is I thought, well, you know, I could do quite a useful, small, lightweight, general purpose knife. And then I started to think, well, I've got quite a lot of these, so for a couple of reasons. One is I thought, well, I like working, if you're practicing certain techniques and different things in batches, it makes, you get better at it a lot quicker than just doing it once every week or twice with something too. So in a sense I thought, oh, I could actually, you know, I'll put a load together. So I took a knife design that would fit all the pieces of steel I had. Now the steel is the exact same 01 high carbon tool steel that I use for everything else. And I found a design that would fit all the offcuts I'd got. So again, I could work in a batch, and that again can save quite a bit of time. I then had a look around at what the other things I had available, and basically what I've ended up doing is making what I suppose I would call, I'm not going to call it a budget because it's not, it's a basic handmade, fully handmade general purpose, small general purpose belt knife. Now, I also, when I was thinking about the sheaths, I thought, right, what can I do for a sheath? Now, originally I was going to make one of these for myself and finish it to a full standard that I do for everything else. And then I thought, well, if anybody sees that, they're just going to go, oh, that's because the basic ones, the crap, you haven't put the effort and all that kind of stuff in. So I changed I'd even started making the sheath for it from my full grade hide. Now, to give you an idea, it's a bit long-winded this, but to give you a bit of an idea now, for me to make this sheath, obviously it's not finished, but to make this sheath out of high-grade double-butted cow hide, with all the finishes on it and everything else, the actual materials are somewhere between, sort of, like say, it's about $10–12 just for the leather and the stitching and then the finishes. About $12 probably just for the finishing, but it'll take me about 2 hours. So there's about 2 hours of work and $12 in that sheath. So realistically, I'd be wanting at least $60 for a sheath like that, at least $60. So what I did was I had a good scour around, and I bought a sheet of veg tanned buffalo hide. And I also got a piece that it wasn't at the highest of grade. Now the actual leather itself and the finishing is exactly the same, but sometimes the surfaces might not have finished quite as high grade. And basically that's what I was told, and basically this is what I've made from it. So it's exactly the same design as I was going to do as this one. It's exactly the same design. It's a bit of a take on the original Kephart model, but the hide and the stitching, because it's already dyed and doesn't need any other finishing to it, although I've actually waxed the outside to protect it, cost me about $4 and less than an hour to make. So realistically, you've got a $30 sheath. So massively cut costs. And that's how. Now it's fully hand stitched. I've made it all myself. It's a friction fit, so the knife doesn't go anywhere. But you can't wet form this type of hide. So that's another reason it's much cheaper, because it's not like an artisan-y type of leather. You can't wet form it. It doesn't tool. You can't tool it the same. You can't wet form it. So it's used much more for more basic mass-produced things. I've been assured that the 3mm thickness that it is a very popular one for mass-produced knife cases, axe cases, bags, holdalls, and things like that. So it's a good quality, durable leather. But it's given all finishes, and I've had a bit of a play around, and I've managed, again, you can't even burnish it. It doesn't burnish the same. However, I've waxed the edges to help seal them and finished it, and it's all hand stitched, and each one will be done to each knife. So as you're gathering, what I was aiming for was to try and see how I could massively, you know, as much as possible reduce costs without reducing the quality of what somebody's going to get. It might not be, I suppose it's a difference between sort of like, you know, a fancy watch and a cheaper watch. As long as they both work and they both take the time and they both last, that's the main thing. And this is the knife design. Now I took the design from a Kephart, which is a very good general purpose knife, quite popular. As you can see, it's 2mm. Now the way I've saved money and time here is I worked in a batch so I could do all my heat treatment at one go. The other way is it's not hand finished apart from the edge. So basically the finish goes to a 400 grit on the flat and the bevel, and then the secondary bevel I have taken to a 600 grit and then polished and then hand polished. But with no hand sanding, I've knocked off an hour and a half of the production time of my full custom models. Now the handle is unstabilised Rimu, so they're all the same. So it's obviously it's old timber and it's dried, so it's a stable timber. It's been glued on with G-Flex, which is the same glue. It's the same resin I use for all my knives. It's the best resin you can get for knife making, I'm told. If it's good enough for Jack Law, it's good enough for me. However, because the timber isn't stabilised and I haven't put liners on, I've saved more money again because I've saved a lot of time. So to give you an idea, the G-Flex, just to glue the scales on for here, it was probably about $2, I think. If I'd have added a liner and then the extra layers, it'd have added probably another 15-20 minutes of work and another $2 or $3 worth of glue and the cost of the liner. So again, greatly reduced the cost. However, I make lots of knives with no liners. You don't need the liner. They're very nice. They're more ornamental these days, but they do look a lot nice. I think they make a knife look a bit classier and nicer. Not the purpose of this knife. So again, that's another big area of saving. However, I'm still using the same sort of timbers as I do for a lot of other knives and the same resins. Now I've put 3 pins in this knife. They've all got 3 pins in them. I've got a bit of light, a couple of holes in the handles obviously for the resin. Now the pins, for these three pins work out about 15 cents each. So you've got about 45 cents of pins in there. If I'd have used Loveless bolts on my mosaic pins, you're looking about $8 to $10 for a set of pins. Actually, if you was using Loveless and I put 3 in, it would be somewhere between 12 and 15. If I buy in bulk, they're $4 each. If you're buying them in smaller batches, you're talking $5 plus each for a Loveless bolt. So I've gone from $15 to 45 cents because I've used the simple pins. The handle it's had the same oil treatment as any other knife. It had 24 hours in my linseed oil and spirit mix. It was then left for 12 hours. It was then wirewooled and linseed oiled, left for 12 hours, wirewool and linseed oiled, left for 2 days, all in my drying cabinet, so it gets to make sure the oil polymerises, and then they were given a buff. So there's no fancy grain, it's not a fancy burl or anything else, there's no, but it's a good, solid, workmanlike timber. And that is how I'm offering these knives currently on Trade Me at $150. My base knife in my custom models start at $260. And you're getting exactly the same steel and the same heat treatment and resins and glues and everything else as you would with that. Don't need to go 2 or 3 times. 1 pass, clean as a whistle. They also come with the same guarantee. I guarantee the knives for my life as a maker, and I also, with these, I will offer a free sharpening service. If you get really manky and anky, I might ask for a few dollars to fix them up because they're going out a lot cheaper. But probably not. I do it because I enjoy it. Just like I enjoy playing with paper. Ooh. Ooh. Good. Little big girl, little big tail there. Yes. So I have one of these. This is mine. This was the first one I finished. And as I started to say earlier, I was going to make one and do it with all my fancy liners and all the fancy bits and pieces. And I just thought, if anybody sees that, and I've been using this now for about a week. I've had it down on the reserve with the boys, made a few tent pegs, whittled and stuff. I've done all sorts of cooking jaws with it. I've done the dog food with it, and that's horrendous on an edge of a knife. And it's still, that's the edge it's still got after a week of use of all sorts of bits and pieces. But what I thought was, like I say, if people saw me using something and it's in my fancy leather sheath and all the bits, but nobody would. Oh, he's made that completely different. So I haven't. So I've just picked one out of the batch. I made a batch of 8. I'm having one because I like it. It's a bloody good knife. And 2 others have already gone. So I'm already down to 5 out of the 8. And they're on, like I said, they're on. Hopefully, if you found this, you're on Trade Me, or it might be just one of you guys who watches me. So with that, whether I do any more of these, I don't know. I did enjoy doing them, but more, I didn't enjoy the batch work. It was a bit, well, that's not why I do what I do and why I like to make all sorts of different things. I don't just make 1 or 2 styles of knives. I like that variety. I like to play. I like to do my big chef's knives and everything else. I love doing. The more complicated, the better. It taxes me. So whether I'll do more along that lines, I don't know. So I hope that was reasonably interesting and a bit of a rationale of what I've done. It's helped me. Some things, some techniques, I've really managed to start nailing some techniques and improving some things. And yeah, it was enjoyable, but it was almost, it get a bit batch-like. It was a batch. It was a bit batch-like and that. But we'll see. I'll see where it goes. You know, it might be that no more of them sell, and I think, oh bugger, I'm not doing that again. But we'll see. So with that, guys, I'll catch you on the flip side, guys.